Hi, Jessica. We are here.
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Can you see the slideshow?
I can.
Beautiful.
I can, yes. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. I can't see you. I don't know if that was intentional, but that's totally fine if you want to keep your camera off, of course.
I might have to. I'm on my phone because I'm over at Carluck Manor. We have a project going right now.
No worries.
And for some reason, my phone is telling me like I have to give Zoom access to the camera. But then when I went into settings, so that's why I was late logging on. I was trying to fix it. So I don't think I can actually turn it on. So I'll be cameraless today.
No problem at all. I am going to let. Hello, Nathan.
I also might have some crazy background noise because I'm at Carluck Manor and they are practicing for the air show this weekend. so I keep hearing very low flying jets.
We're in downtown, so if you hear anything, yeah, we're definitely in the same boat.
Oh.
It's understandable.
So should we put our name like in the chat that we're here for roll call or anything? No.
That would be amazing. Yes, thank you.
All right.
Julia, I thought you were on sabbatical. I am not yet on sabbatical. However, I am going to continue to come to these meetings even if I am on sabbatical.
Dedication.
Julia and I are under attack from the Elmendor squadron at the moment. Hopefully we can hear you.
That's what we were talking about just before that. Emily and myself are downtown, so we are also under attack.
And just in case anyone is wondering, I'm Emily and this is Mitch over here. We kind of sort of were introduced, but we're stepping in for Emily today. And yeah, and I will be keeping it muted because I can already hear one coming in here.
And I know it's a couple minutes past 3, but I'm just going to give it a few more minutes to see if we can get quorum, because we're only at 6 right now. Seven with Allison.
Hi, guys.
Hello. We need 2 more for quorum, so we're just giving it a few minutes.
Okay. I'm going to turn my mute button on because I've got planes flying over and I've got Charlie barking, so.
I do believe the air show is going to be our unofficial guest of this meeting.
I can't believe they didn't get the message that we were having our meeting today and that they should put this on pause for a different time.
Well, and I was at my office and I couldn't hear anything out of my office. So I moved to my house and then I get home and Charlie won't stop barking. So I'm like, oh my God. She loves to watch planes. I'll have to get her over here to show you her. She's gotten so much bigger. Come here, Charlie. Come here.
Oh my goodness.
I know, right?
Not going to be a lap pupper much longer.
I know. I had to take an Advil today because I picked her up without doing my official body technique of lifting with my legs. She's like a little moose now.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, go back to your puzzle.
Did I hear somebody say they're having an air show?
Yeah, there's an air show that's happening, but they're practicing and it's going over all of downtown and plus, so it's very loud.
So they're probably rehearsing for this weekend, maybe?
Yeah.
Guy, I had no idea. Huh.
Well, Julia and I live right at the end of the runway, so it's particularly exciting.
Do we have any business that we're required to have quorum?
Just the minutes,
Okay.
unless anything came through committees, that is a surprise addition, but otherwise, yeah, just the minutes. So I was giving it until 3:05. It's 3:05. So we'll go ahead and get started knowing that unless we get one more counselor joining us, we just won't have quorum. But I will ask if anybody had any agenda changes or any edits to the minutes, just so that we can get them on record for when we vote later if we get enough people.
I didn't have any edits or agenda changes.
All right. Well, then we will move through to the agenda item number 3, items for education, discussion, and decision. The 2 big topics of today's meeting are the advisory council nominations and the voting process. Everyone should have seen in your packet that there was the nomination packet. We received 2 applications for advisory council seats. And so those are included in there. And then I'm going to tag to Tawny to talk a little bit about the voting process and how that's going to work.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen here so that I made a couple slides right before this meeting to make it easier. Okay, so there are 3 open seats right now for share screen. Okay, so there are 3 open seats for the advisory council. We had Nicole Lebo and Sophie Tidler had stepped down, and then also when Meg accepted the full-time position as ED of ACH, that opened the 3rd spot. So can everybody see the slides? Okay. Okay, perfect. So right now, in the packet that we prepared for you, it gave kind of an overview of all this information, but basically, you know, we had it opened quite a long time. We had asked people to apply. We invited people who have expressed interest before, including, I'll go to the next slide here. Did it go? Oh, I gotta click it on this one. So Captain Denise Delgado, who had expressed interest from the Salvation Army, Robin Dempsey, and she had applied after Lisa had stepped down. Andrea Nestor had expressed interest and she applied, and Shanae Williams of Shiloh Housing has expressed interest. But again, we had opened it up initially in the early spring, and then because of sort of the lack of applications with Meg's open position, we reopened it up. We sent it out to membership. We did some recruitment. Unfortunately, the only 2 applications we got were the same from Robin. It's not really unfortunately, it's just we didn't get as many as we had hoped, I guess I should say. Robin and Andrea Nestor. And the things that I kind of wanted to touch base on was going back on the general election process, which is, you know, we just reviewed, we put the applications together at ACH just because we're sort of the point of contact. And then we provide it to the executive committee. And, you know, we had conversations at the executive committee about, and at the larger committee about how we're dealing with open seats. One of the things that keeps kind of coming up is, are we electing people for being who they are in their experience, or for the organization? You know, kind of came up with Nicole Lebo. Losing her at the health department was kind of a big deal when she left the health department. But, you know, I wanted to also kind of show, make the point, which is we are the, and when I say we, I say the advisory council. The advisory council elects the person to fill the position, and because there is no term limit, that the seat on the advisory council remains with them wherever they may go. So keeping that in mind, and also that the only time I don't think we've ever asked somebody to leave. So really it's if somebody is no longer interested or able to serve, is generally how we seem to have sort of lost folks who move on. So the next step essentially is for the full council to sort of talk among, and that's why we're doing it here, to talk amongst each other, to figure out if the 2 folks who were included in the packet today are folks you want to move to the next step and the final step in the election process. That is going to be sharing in the public meeting, letting them know, and then it goes out by an electronic email to all COC partners and members. Advisory council members will get 2 votes. You'll get your vote as an advisory council member, and then you'll get to vote again as a COC member. And it'll be an electronic vote, just like we've done in the past on SurveyMonkey. And there'll also be a spot where you can nominate somebody, or you can also not vote for people. You don't, just because they're on there, there's many different options. So the proposed deadline for when that would come back here to us, I would like it to be August 10th, which is a Wednesday, which allows me to gather the information before the Advisory Council Executive Committee meeting. Because then we usually let them know what the results are, and then the August meeting would be the first meeting for the new counselors. We'd let the counselors know in between that. So that being said, one thing I just want to share is, let me skip, and I apologize, the formatting isn't totally, I had to kind of do this quickly, but for 2022, this is HUD's list of COC inclusive participants. So this means that, in my understanding is that this is the list of folks that they want at the table at the advisory council meetings. And, one thing I realized is we haven't done a new survey of the entire council about where folks fit now, because I know a lot of people may have moved jobs. So looking at this list, the reason I want to show you is I think some of the things we haven't asked about in a while, like we haven't asked about EMS crisis response teams. So I'm not sure if folks, have experience with that. And it kind of is important also from the perspective of the conversation that the council has had and seems to want to move forward on, which is the idea of having sort of designated organizational seats so that we can have organizations that sort of fill in the gap with who serves on the council. And so what I did was I put this together. This is our current characteristic strength. It's our advisory council experience matrix. And you can see that the experiences that we have are, it's a lot fewer than the one that I just showed you that HUD now requires. So recognizing, that sort of limitation. And then all the way at the bottom, you have the 2 applicants, Robin Dempsey and Andrea Nestor, and I, tried to fill out where they indicated they have experience there, which again is in the packet itself. So let me stop there, and I can stop sharing my screen if that's helpful, or I can leave this up because really it's kind of a discussion on what you as the council would like to do in terms of advancing these folks or not, or to the next step, the final kind of elections phase. Okay.
I think leaving it up for right now is a good idea.
Okay.
And I'm trying to watch participants to see if anyone raises their hand also, but people, everyone, please feel free to just unmute and talk. I know that updating, and maybe this is a counselor survey out to people, just asking them annually to update if they have any new checkboxes that apply to them. And then that would allow us to get the information from the HUD update of the demographics that they're looking for to be represented on the advisory council.
Yeah, and I think the one question we'd want to clarify before sending that out, which is, and this has come up, and I don't know if Helen or Julie are on, Julie might know, is, does it have to be what they are currently working in? And my understanding is yes. I'm seeing Dave even say yes. Or is it just at any point in their life they've had this experience? They've worked at a hospital, they worked in, maybe they worked at a wake, and then they moved into an organization focusing on disability advocacy. That's the question that seemingly hasn't really been answered clearly. And how we've operated so far is a mix of the two. And that, I think that's one that we'll try to get answered. Unless somebody here, I saw Dave shaking his head yes, so maybe he knows, or somebody could answer that now. That's, I know that question will come up.
The person has to be currently representing that type of an organization.
Okay. And they can
So-
represent more than one though, right?
Yep, they could be, yeah, someone might be on the board of a social justice advocacy, disability advocacy organization, as well as work for, I don't know, a service provider or a governmental entity or an ESG subrecipient. They just have to be, it has to be active concurrently.
Yeah, my understanding is the only one that does not fall into is the lived homelessness experience. So if you're formerly homeless, you would qualify under that. But I think everything else, it's what you're doing in your current role. And as if you're on a board of something like that, that would also qualify. But I worked for a hospital 20 years ago. That doesn't put me in the hospital category.
Mhm. Yeah,
And-
and so I think that's going to be a big change in terms of because I think the question as we ask now in applications and have makes it seem like it's like at any point in your career experience, what do you have experience with? And so I just wanted to call that out because as I was creating this and I was looking at what Helen had recently asked, I sort of realized that there was a little bit of a shortcoming there. And also that creates difficulties in theory when somebody who, let's say, works for the health department, then leaves the health department and goes somewhere else that may suddenly fall off that list. The question is, what happens then? And so I think that's where that conversation that we've had around designated housing or designated seats, so that for these jobs that might have higher transition, we make sure we keep the representation. Anyway, I saw Helen's hand up, so.
And the most recent communication we had from HUD is that they're cracking down a little bit on that personal experience of homelessness categorization, and it has to be within the last 7 years.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good. Yeah. So I think my understanding is that HUD is essentially looking to ensure that these, the COC boards are diverse and inclusive and not run by the privileged white cis folks, to be completely honest, because we know that's not the experience of people who are experiencing homelessness in many ways. So I think it sounds like there's a little hiccup, but also I just wanted to bring that attention here and then say, the next steps. Because at the very least I do, Andrea working for the health department now, she does have local government experience and that was on the other list. And then obviously Robin Dempsey with Catholic Social Services right now. I think, that is a number of things, including other homeless subpopulation advocates. And I think there was one for youth or family. So both of the two candidates at least fit into the current requirements as well. Yeah, Julia.
Yeah, I have two different thoughts. The first is that request to send out a new rubric that includes all of these new HUD inclusive qualities feels really important, especially with HUD's refocusing on equity. And I saw on that last list, I think it was the previous slide, that specifically looking for organizations that are led by and serving Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other people of color. I think we have a real lack of that currently. Also organizations led by and serving queer people, clearly that's me, but I would really like to see a new rubric go out before we're considering new candidates, because I want to see the true picture of the advisory council as it sits right now. And some of the information that you all are sharing feels really important. Like I was looking at what I answered, and clearly some of those things that I answered were from a history of work experience. I would like to comment that I find that crackdown on lived experience of homelessness to be pretty problematic as a person who was houseless for 7 years and then continued to experience housing instability until like maybe 6 years ago. I feel like I have a particular voice that helps for the young people that I serve. I know we can't really do anything about it when it comes to HUD's crackdown, but I do think that this speaks to some of the conversations that we've been having around mentorship and making sure that there are young people at the table who feel like their voice is actually going to be heard. There is power that comes with the stabilization that some of us have gotten to experience. And I know that we'd like to redistribute it a little bit. That's my soapbox. Allison?
Yeah, I think I would, Julia, you said it better than me. I think that, their crackdown of 7 years, I think it's a point of guidance, but I think that there is a lot of wisdom in those that have experienced it and are in a different space. But that I wouldn't want us to be so tightly held to that we wouldn't think about all the contributions that can be offered, because I too run an organization that our board, we're really working hard on having our board represent those that we serve. And some of it, the experiences that I have learned have been from those that have experienced it, and it may be 8 years, but I don't want us to be so rigid that we don't think about that. And I agree with Julia. I'm not sure how I answered all the questions to even reflect who I am. So just want us to be mindful of that and use it as a guiding, not as concrete and restrictive. I'm not sure if I'm calling on the next, but I'll tag Meg.
Thanks, Allison. So I have an idea. HUD wants what HUD wants, but I think we can, as a COC, if it's the will of the advisory committee, reflect who we fully are. So I think we could possibly have this, maybe do it by color coding or something, so we know like what is specifically required by HUD and within HUD's definitions, and then the optional things that are important to the COC to make sure that we are aware of and know that we represent. I feel like that's a good balance from what I just heard and kind of where we get stuck in what HUD wants. So that's a suggestion to toss out there as we move through updating this list and this exercise. Thanks.
Well, and I also really want to acknowledge that this does sort of throw a wrench in the plans for the elections. And I apologize for not catching this sooner, and only just, sometimes it just happens when you're preparing a different resource. So, the one thing from the perspective of, if the question comes up, well, what about the elections? I thought we had a plan. So it's totally up to the advisory council to decide when elections are. And that's your prerogative. I think the other thing is that the August meeting, the plan is for it to be the official one of two of the biennial all COC public meetings that require like the formal government mandated public notice, 30 days and in different areas. So, that being said, that could still be a good plan if the choice was to resend this out to folks here, get a better idea of where we are. We could use that as an opportunity to invite people who might be a good fit from a perspective of additional candidates, because we still have that third seat that would remain unfilled anyway. And it would be an opportunity for them to hear. So that is the other thing, but I'll pass it on to Jessica, but I did want to apologize for throwing a wrench in already late plans.
I think that's actually a really good point and a really good plan. I think that these two applicants turned in their applications quite a bit ago at the very beginning of the open period. So I do want to move forward with elections as planned and with these two applicants, but knowing that we do have some updates to make, and we do have a third vacant seat that would continue to be vacant. I would like to use the August meeting to promote that and talk with the hopefully larger group that we have at that meeting to be able to encourage people to apply for an advisory council seat. And I do think that just working in general to try to amp up the full COC participation in the public section of the meeting will really help as well, because that is a period of time and a space for getting some of those insights. And it's my understanding that's why it was designed the way it was, with the portion of it being that way, was so that people who weren't necessarily advisory council members, but still might represent one of these, listed target areas, to still be able to give their input, because there's 34 things on this list. And I know we're going to have a lot of overlap, but I think that it's fairly realistic to think that there's going to be occasionally one or two of these items that just doesn't get filled by a counselor. It's just going to happen that way. So I think that encouraging people to participate in whichever way they can and whichever way they're comfortable, whether that is being on a committee or just coming to the meetings, I think that that's a way that we can help as well. And I see Julia has their hand up also.
Thank you. Not to belabor points that I have made before, but I just wanted to clarify that my concern is not whether or not my voice is valued or whether I'm welcome in this space. Clearly, I come here, I talk a lot. I'm more concerned about the fact that both this meeting space and then the public meeting space and our committee spaces are not very accessible to people who are not used to working within sort of a nonprofit business model. And I think that we really need to think about that as we're looking at the larger rubric, when we're thinking about all of these different voices that we should be having at the table and the creative minds that we're losing out on simply because of the structure of our space. I've brought it up before. I know there's probably not anything that we can do about it right away, because part of it is about how the bylaws are written, but I think that it's something that we cannot lose track of here. I find it hard to come to these meetings because I'm not sure that I'm being helpful at all. And if I feel that way in a stabilized place in my life with all of my education and all of those things, a young person is certainly going to feel that way. And somebody who is experiencing the disorganization of being currently unhoused is going to feel that way. Just, again, my opinion, and you can take it or leave it.
I will always take everyone's opinions. I definitely understand what you're saying. And I think that I've been in that place before on different boards, and honestly, sometimes just in meetings where I walk into it and start to wonder, what am I even contributing to this? I hope that the committee meetings are slightly more inclusive than that, because they are a smaller group and less formal, but I think that that's a task for all of the counselors moving forward, is to really brainstorm ideas on how to be more inclusive of that, and making sure that we're able to meet people where they are in terms of technology, in terms of comfort level. And if, smaller group environments are better, if there are people who feel that they would rather respond to surveys or participate by email or things like that. I see Tawny.
Yeah, and also to touch on that, Julia, which is that, so we have in our office, we have a community training space attached, sort of, it's Suite B, it's the next to us, but it's set up right now. It was housing some outreach supplies and donations, but in the next week or so, we're going to be putting it back together as a meeting space. And then so I think I have to get a camera for that room, but the idea is that it would be a shared sort of hybrid meeting space that allows for even possibly these meetings to be hybrid, or community, like the committee meetings, if you want to do those hybrid or in person. We could also look at getting bus passes to support folks so that they can get here to the space. And from the only other thing I wanted to say from an inclusivity perspective is, when we send out the elections, we send it out, and I was just reading over this, I would say to many, the only group of people, but even the homeless or formerly homeless, I do know we have a number of members who are engaged, who get our newsletter, we have emails for that we would be sending this out to in the election process, and that we try to get out the weekly news digest. And I think the question is, how do you getting people to participate in the COC meetings? I do know that we have people who are joining the public meetings on and off throughout the year. I think perhaps one suggestion that I would ask, or I would make, and it's up to you to let me know, is when I send out the election email to everyone, I could actually include this survey as like, it's a self-identification survey, like, and the person or whomever's identifying, that is private, that won't be shared, but just so that we know who is voting in this. And we could even be able to come back and say, okay, well, here are the people and here's how they identified, and give them an option for like other, and that could go before or after the part about the election itself. We could do that. And we can also use that email and that as a solicitation for folks to, if they express interest in further working with the advisory council or being involved, because we do have a list of volunteers. We just haven't had a way to like do things with this list of people. We're like, I want to help in some way. And I think that's the struggle, is like, how do we get the people who aren't necessarily in the work directly because of their jobs, but they want to help or they want to be involved? That's the part that we've sort of, the advisory council hasn't yet been able to sort of navigate that. And so I think that's, Julia, kind of what speaks to some of what you're saying. And yeah, I think it's acknowledged that it's kind of an issue, and certainly made more difficult with COVID, because previously the meetings were held at like the library, and I know they were a little different. So at some point, I know there's a COVID surge, but maybe the folks want to talk about hybrid meetings or other things, but.
Thank you for that. I do think that that's something that I'm definitely interested in thinking about going forward. If there is an appetite or people do want to transition to hybrid style meetings for either committees or the advisory council meetings. So I do think that having that option is really helpful, and I would encourage people to talk about it if it's something that you have feelings about either direction, or as a committee head, if that's something that you're interested in. So I know that we have the special NOFO on the agenda for this portion and an update on the second portion of the meeting. So I don't know if Helen, if you had, or Helen or Julie, I don't know.
Can I ask a quick question before we move on? So to wrap up this, would you like me to move forward with announcing it in the second part and explaining that there are two candidates that will be going out for vote, and that we'll have the all COC meeting where people can join and potentially see if they're also interested, because we have that third open spot.
Mm-hmm.
And would you like me to move forward with that? Because I want to make sure we have the time to get that out.
Yes, I do think we would like to do that. I would like to get as many seats as we can filled, but also wanting to keep moving forward and keep trying to improve the process and improve the information that we have. But knowing that we had that August meeting scheduled to be our all COC public meeting, I do want to move forward with the election as we'd originally planned. And unless anyone feels very strongly the other direction, we can vote on it. We can just go ahead and move with that. I'm not hearing opposition, so.
Okay, I will get that out probably Monday. So
Okay.
check your emails.
All right. So special NOFO.
This is Helen. I'm ready to do the presentation if you'd like to have it in this one and in the public facing one
Yeah,
as well.
I think that's fine. I also think that this portion could be a little bit more informal if you wanted, to talk more focused on what the role of the advisory council is in the special NOFO versus the more generalized information, whatever you guys are comfortable with on that side. But I do know that advisory council does have a role that's a little bit separate from just the general public getting the information on it.
Can someone give me screen sharing privileges, please?
There, you should be co-host now.
Okay. Okay. So I'm feel free to jump in and with comments. Okay. The COC supplemental. So this is the very first time that the government, that HUD has sent out competitive COC notice of funding opportunity aside from the standard COC that we get. So the way that they funded this was through the recollection of previous award monies that had not been spent. And so HUD raked them back in, and now they're working on trying to get them back out, get them out again. It's the special notice of funding opportunity. And so we are affectionately calling it the SNOFO. In response to an increased number of individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness, as shown in the recent PIT counts, after many years of unsheltered homelessness declining even before COVID hit, unsheltered homelessness was back on the rise again. And it's to support the COCs in targeting individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness. It'll provide funding for supportive services, housing opportunities, and bringing in new units and implementing coordinated approaches that are grounded in housing first and public health principles. Policy priorities are unsheltered homelessness, to identify people living in unsheltered situations and connect them with services. So do enhanced outreach and housing coordination, and then also increase HMIS capabilities to collect data on this population based on what types of data we think would be best for us to be able to use in the future, making those data-driven decisions. The next priority is to work on unsheltered homeless in rural areas and assistance on tribal lands. So they're really focusing on areas of the country where previous COC funding has never been eligible. And so that there's a lot of combination with tribal lands and the fact that COC funding was not accessible for folks in those areas. And that's going to be the one that Anchorage can go after. We do not qualify as rural. That's balance of state. And based on our geography boundaries, we don't have tribal lands within the geography of our COC. So the policy priorities involve incorporating a broad array of stakeholders in this process. It calls for us to develop and implement a plan to serve individuals and families experiencing homelessness with severe service needs, and to do this in an inclusive process with many stakeholders. The plan is to be attached to the COC collaborative application for the SNOFO, It's to be 15, no more than 15 pages long. And there are a lot of rules and specifics on what we need to do and the process and the participants we need to have. And then individuals with severe service needs are described in the SNOFO. There's a list of potential indicators, and as long as a person or family experiences more than one of those indicators, they are classified as having severe service needs. And as we go deeper into this, the next presentation, we can talk about what those are, but the reality is that anyone who is living unsheltered is going to qualify as someone with a severe service need. We are to advance equity, identify and address equity within the COC geography for BIPOC and LGBTQ plus clients by implementing system and program changes, and it must be built into the plan mentioned above. One thing they said is don't make us ask any questions. So basically we need to hit every one of the requirements that they have for this plan in the plan that we submit. And we need to demonstrate programmatic use of the housing first model. Everybody always clicks that box that says housing first, but when you go back and take a look at some of those definitions, we may have a program or two that isn't sticking strictly to housing first model requirements. The funding amount, the funding is allocated for a 3-year grant. And at the end of that 3-year period, it is possible, maybe probable, that any award would convert into the COC grant with 1-year terms, which means it could potentially increase our annual renewal demand, which then gives us greater opportunity to bring more funds into the Anchorage COC on a regular basis and continue to support programming. The Anchorage could be awarded up to $1,813,073. It's not a guarantee that we will get that much money, but that's the amount that's in the unsheltered homeless set aside for the Anchorage COC. We're allowed to use up to 3% of that maximum award or the actual amount awarded as a planning grant. And the difference is that in previous and regular NOFOs, we don't rank the planning grant. It's just becomes an automatic at the top of the list. And for this SNOFO, the planning grant will have to go through the exact same review and ranking process that the rest of the grants go through. Unsheltered homelessness set aside can cover permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, transitional housing and permanent housing, rapid rehousing, supportive services only. And then the collaborative applicant can apply for funds for planning, coordinated entry, HMIS, and planning. But again, all of those applications go into the standard mix. One of the things for non-rural, for the homeless set aside, the unsheltered homeless set aside, is that this grant will not pay for any acquisitions, construction, or remodel. Who can apply? Same eligibility requirements as a standard NOFO, 501c3, state and local government, tribes, and tribally designated housing entities. The plan, which is the keystone of the SNOFO. So on a 100-point basis, this plan counts for 70 points. And it must leverage housing resources. They want to see an increase in the number of permanent housing units available for unsheltered individuals. They want us to incorporate landlord recruitment. We must leverage healthcare resources. They want direct contributions from public and private health insurance providers and health service providers. They're tailored for the program participants, and they want direct partnerships and written commitments, not a, hey, our intention is to talk to XYZ clinic and request that we have providers come with us during outreach. That's not going to cut it. We have to say we have a written agreement and partnership with this organization. The value of their contribution is this much of the program. We must involve people with lived experience in decision-making. This is actually where that 7-year requirement comes in, is specifically for this plan. And we have to have a work group that incorporates a minimum of 3 people who have recent experience with houselessness, and we must have a written letter from that work group that says they agree with the plan. There needs to be a strategy to identify, shelter, and house unsheltered individuals and families. The extension of our street outreach program here in Anchorage is going to be very beneficial to the creation of this plan. And while shelter and temporary housing is important, we need to make sure that it is not just a shelter plan, but it actually is a path that moves people from unsheltered homelessness into permanent housing. Identify, shelter, and house individuals using data, and we have to be able to demonstrate performance with that data. Identify and prioritize households experiencing or with histories of unsheltered homelessness, support underserved communities, and support equitable community development. So due dates. These are subject to change, but currently these are the due dates we're rolling with. We hope to have the applications out the week after next for new projects, and these all have to be new projects. We will ask for all applications to be submitted back to the COC by the 15th. The review and rank process will be concluded by the 4th, so we can notify applicants whether their application has been approved and will be included with the collaborative application. And then we need to send in the collaborative application and project priority list, as well as our plan by October 13th of 2022. And bonus, just for funsies, we've heard a fairly reliable rumor that we can expect to see the actual regular COC competition NOFO drop sometime between tomorrow and Wednesday of next week. And the rumor has it that it will be due on September 29th, which means we will have 60 days for the standard COC NOFO instead of the 90 that we normally have. And while at the same time, we're working on the SNOFO. So yay, that's it.
Helen, can you talk a little bit about what the plan for the plan for the community plan is? Are you thinking that that would be something we want to stand a committee up to work on, or is that something that an existing committee would be taking the lead on?
I'm going to ask someone else to field this one.
Hi there. This is Meg. So I think that's who she meant by someone else. So the community plan, I think this is going to feel like us doing some planning for the special NOFO, but the idea is that we take that and we roll that into the revamp of Anchored Home. I think that we have to prioritize the special NOFO given the tight timeline and the NOFO timeline. But I want that work, or I'm thinking of that work as the precursor to the larger community discussion and Anchored Home, what we like to refer to as Anchored Home 2.0. So that's kind of where we're starting from, but totally open to feedback.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And that was kind of where my question was going, was that the community prioritization committee might be the best place to start that work and then pull in people from other committees or the advisory council as a whole or other COC members. I saw a question from Julia asking if there is money available that we could pay a working group or for the experience and input of recently unhoused people to contribute.
So I'm going to take a crack at it from the larger community plan perspective, and Helen can correct me if there's something more specific to the special NOFO. We have funds for anchored home. And so from that, if this is something that's going to flow into anchored homework, absolutely. I don't know of any other special set asides, but I might be missing something as related to the current special NOFO process.
And from the HUD perspective, we are expected to provide stipends to those who are unhoused and or really unstably housed, and providing input into our community plan.
All right. Well, I think one of the biggest questions I had about the SNOFO was answered by the comments today on the release of the normal NOFO. And my biggest question was, is this going to be a concurrent process or separate? And it's obviously going to have most of it be separate at this point. And maybe I'm getting in the weeds now here, but I know that we will have to stand up a rank and review committee. And so it sounds like we will likely have to stand up 2 separate groups, because there will be a separate group of applicants for the 2 different pots. And so just wanting to see about that. Oh, and Helen's hand is up too.
I don't know that it's necessary that we have 2 different committees. It will, in large part, kind of depend on who's on the committees. We just have to make sure that there's no one on the review and rank committee that is affiliated in any way with one of the applicants in either section. And then there was a webinar put on by the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and Ann Oliva is now the president and CEO of that organization. She used to actually run the SNAPS department for HUD. And so when she did the webinar, for the SNOFO, she essentially said, pay attention to what's important here, because HUD is giving you a preview into what will be important in the regular NOFO. So our greatest wish is that there will be a lot of consistency between the 2, so that we can kind of do double duty with the work that's being involved in putting together the response for the SNOFO.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to unmute and just ask. I am looking at the time and seeing that it's 3:54, and so we did not get to the committee check-in and updates for the committees and work groups. So I don't know if anyone wants to hop in really quick. I know that it being summertime and the fact that there were holidays, there may not have been committee meetings this month, so there might not be anything to update on that.
CE revamp did not meet in July and will meet again on the 5th of August.
Okay.
I can briefly report on the data committee. It was myself and ICA staff and ACH staff. So we had a good discussion about some very technical things. But yeah, I wouldn't call it a full-fledged committee meeting, but I look forward in August and September having more members who are either not on vacation or not otherwise engaged in more critical crisis sorts of situations.
And Sharon, when does the data committee meet?
I think it's the 3rd Wednesday of each month at 3 o'clock.
So the
Something.
17th.
That sounds right. I'd have to look at my calendar.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, the 3rd Wednesday at 3.
Okay.
And we've just been on Zoom. Maybe at the next meeting, we can discuss whether we want to transition to a more hybrid approach. But
And I know Katie's not here today, and I don't think the Community Prioritization Committee met anyway. And I am not sure if the Compliance Committee met, which I should know because I'm on it. Sid, did we have
No,
a
me-
meeting? I
no
didn't think we
meetings.
did. I thought I just saw a cancellation. So, all right.
That's
Well, then
correct.
we will go ahead and break and rejoin in 4 to 5 minutes for the public portion. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our new attendees and welcome back to the advisory council members from our break. Just want to welcome everyone to the July meeting and thank everyone for joining us and for everything that you do for people experiencing homelessness in our city. We have a pretty full agenda, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement and a mission moment. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement recognizing the Indigenous people of a place. It is a public gesture and appreciation for the past and present Indigenous stewardship of the lands that we now occupy. The Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness and the Homelessness Prevention and Response System Advisory Council would like to acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascans. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina. Moving to the mission moment, I wanted to share an experience that I had last week, and I shared with some of our partners and some of the ACEH staff. There was an event held last Thursday at the Park Pavilion next to Centennial Campground, where we were able to create a space for people to come that are currently staying at Centennial Campground to engage with outreach staff, get a coordinated entry assessment if they needed it, to check in on the status of any paperwork or applications that they might have pending through outreach. And then also we're able to partner with South Central Foundation to bring their ICM teams down to be able to provide some support to the people staying at the campground, the staff of the campground, volunteers that are at the campground, to be able to talk and process through some of the trauma that has been experienced just over the time frame that the campground has been open to people experiencing homelessness to camp at, as well as following the incident on Wednesday night with the shooting. And Beans Cafe donated some cookies. The coalition staff brought coffee, and it just was a really wonderful time to be together and to really join everybody who was there and be able to provide support and hand out some donations, have a cookie, have a hot cup of coffee, get some dry underwear, get a poncho. So I just wanted to share that I thought that that was a really wonderful moment to see some partners coming together and being able to be there for everybody who needed some support that day. And then just to share that event happened again today, and we are hoping to make that a weekly event out there at that pavilion for the outreach staff to go out and be able to engage and connect with people who are staying at the campground. So that started the general HPRS updates, which I think are at the forefront of everyone's mind, being the Centennial Campground situation. And I know that the Salvation Army was able to pull some providers together and talk a little bit about how people can partner and be able to provide services to our neighbors that are out at the campground. So they have a website set up now that details out ways that service providers can provide assistance out there, and also some direction to community volunteers. to be able to volunteer anything that they have that they wanted to donate. So they have a list of requested items and instructions on how those items can be processed through Salvation Army to benefit people who are staying at the campground. There's also a list on the coalition website of items that can be donated for general unsheltered outreach, which does include people at the campground as well as all of our neighbors that are not at the campground, but also experiencing unsheltered homelessness. We did not have any past meeting action items to follow up on. The committee check-in and updates, I did just want to share that with July being the summertime, we had a lot of people on vacations and we had some holidays in there. So the committees that did meet with a smaller group, and they did more high-level overview of the work, but everyone is looking forward to jumping into the August committee meetings and hopefully having more people be able to attend and engage. And I want to offer out to everybody who is participating in today's meeting, if you have a committee that you are interested in participating on or serving on, please feel free to reach out to myself directly or to the ACEH facilitator for the meeting, and we can get those invites out to you or more information about the committee work if that's something you're interested in. With that, I will hand off to Meg to give the ACH report.
Hey everyone, it's good to see you all. So I'm going to give a few updates. I'm actually going to go backwards on this list, just to throw you all for a loop on a Thursday afternoon. So starting with ACH operational updates, as related to the COC, the biggest one is the work on the special NOFO and the upcoming NOFO, as well as we will soon be issuing our RFP for Bezos Day One funding. So watch for those. Similarly, we are working through the process to issue requests for proposals around street outreach through the recent appropriation by the Anchorage Assembly. And so that will have a couple of components. So just we'll make sure to publicize them both through our website, the weekly digest, and our email lists. So if you aren't getting emails or aren't hearing from us, please reach out so we make sure you're fully looped in. And I think that will be really important to keep track of. We had a temporary part-time a temporary housing transition coordinator position that will be ending at the end of the month, which adds a unique and interesting challenge as we move into the time that remains at the Aviator Hotel or the non-congregate mass care facility there. That position had previously really worked with individuals, case managers, to facilitate housing and outplacements of individuals prior to the closure of a facility. We won't have that position after tomorrow. So I just wanted to put that on your radars as we work with you all to try to find alternative placements in housing for the 232 individuals who are at that location. That's just a little bit of background as we reach out and try to partner to work through those things. Facilitation updates, as you all know, facilitation is ended, but what I think you can see, and this kind of bleeds right into government updates, is their group of assembly members who are trying and did put forward parts of a plan to kind of respond to the increased number of unsheltered individuals, start to plan for winter, and to move forward the funding appropriation for the 130 units of what are currently transitional housing into permanent housing downtown at the guest house. So I think that you'll see those pieces as approved move towards being operationalized both by the coalition and partners. Parts of that are really exciting is emergency shelter planning for cold weather already, which is, I think, maybe a bit unprecedented, and really having a great plan for families, as well as some work through Brother Francis Shelter to find some additional capacity there. I understand there is probably going to be more work done. I know it's been left with the health department to come up with an emergency sheltering plan, but I believe we can lead by doing small parts of that. So whether it's youth or transition age youth and kind of coming up with that plan and bringing it forward so it can be funded. Similarly, elders or any other subpopulation. I think it's really hard to take on the 250 some individuals that will likely, currently aren't planned for, but if we kind of break it down and come up with ideas and work together and advance those ideas, I think we can possibly piecemeal together a pretty decent emergency sheltering plan, and hopefully work in cooperation with the health department on whatever that larger scale response needs to be. And so those are primarily kind of where we're at in this moment. I wanted to, Centennial and what has happened out there has weighed heavily on my mind, as I'm sure it has for a lot of you. And I've been spending a lot of time thinking about how that type of situation could have been avoided. And so I'm just going to put an idea out there because I think it's an important idea for all of us to chew on, over the coming months and, maybe find time to have work sessions or conversations about it. As I was thinking about what possibly led to that situation, it was really, we had a very large number, we continue to have a very large number of unsheltered individuals in our community. And when it's cold at 45 degrees, emergency sheltering is required. When there is an emergency declared by the mayor, emergency shelter is required. When the health department director finds that there isn't adequate shelter with regard to a particular subpopulation, emergency shelter is required. It's all in the municipal code. The only automatic trigger is that temperature trigger. What if when we hit a certain threshold of unsheltered individuals in our community, there's another automatic trigger that emergency sheltering is required? I think as we talk through what we want emergency sheltering and the role we want emergency sheltering to play in our community, we should add that to the conversation. I think it would also likely lead to a more robust emergency sheltering plan that wasn't just tied to cold weather. It could be tied toward dealing with other inclement weather events, whether it's hard rains and flooding, just the sheer number of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness, burn bans. I think we have a lot of circumstances in which we just don't have a plan for. And so really just want to toss that out there as something to think about. I'll keep raising it as we continue to meet in the coming months. And just really wanting to find opportunity in the moment to think about what policy and practice changes can be done to be better prepared in the future should we end up in a similar circumstance of such a large number of unsheltered individuals. We know shelter is very expensive. And if we aren't going to have the availability of housing units in the moment, we need another response. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions if there are time for those. Otherwise, if you have any thoughts on that idea, or you want to engage in some dialogue about that, I'll pop my email in the chat just to remind you all of what it is. I think most everyone knows it, but I welcome that conversation. Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, Meg. And I just wanted to say, I love that idea. I think that cold weather is definitely a very important trigger for emergency shelter, but I think that there are a lot of circumstances that could be that trigger. And we have an opportunity right now as we start to build some of these plans now that there's actual funding to to make those considerations. And something that came up in the earlier session that I think would be really important to bring to this conversation again is that the voice and the thoughts of people who are experiencing homelessness right now, sheltered or unsheltered, and talking to them about what some of the barriers are and how a truly inclusive shelter program and plan could help and could bring some relief to some of this. So I think that's a great idea, and I would love to start engaging some conversations around developing those plans and also making sure that we are including voices. Okay. If anyone else has any questions or comments for Meg, she did put email address in the chat. And also, of course, as always, feel free to just unmute and ask. All right, Helen, you are up with the presentation on the upcoming funding opportunity.
Thanks, Jessica. Second. We go. Everyone can see that? Take that as a yes. Okay. So I'm here to talk about the COC supplemental NOFO to address unsheltered and rural homelessness. This is the very first time that HUD has sent out a competitive notice of funding opportunity through the COC program that wasn't the standard COC NOFO. So the supplemental one is actually funded through the recollection of funds that were not spent by COC grantees over the course of the last 5-6 years. And so now they're going to reallocate them to communities in order to specifically address unsheltered homelessness. We are affectionately calling the supplemental NOFO the SNOFO. So the intent of it is to respond to the increase in unsheltered homelessness. Unsheltered homelessness was decreasing pretty steadily. And then just before the COVID pandemic, it actually started to increase. So this was only exacerbated by COVID. Its intent is to support COCs in targeting individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness and providing supportive services, new housing opportunities and units, and to implement coordinated approaches grounded in housing first and public health principles. There are 3 policy priorities, HUD policy priorities for these funds. The first is to focus on unsheltered homelessness, to identify folks who are living unsheltered and connect them with services and housing navigation, and to enhance HMIS collection in any way we think is needed to be able to better understand the data in this population. It also is intended to address unsheltered homelessness in rural areas and providing assistance on tribal lands where COC funding was previously not allowed to be expended. In Anchorage, in our COC, we are only eligible for the unsheltered homelessness set aside. The policy priorities include that involving a broad array of stakeholders. The SNOW calls for us to develop and implement a COC plan to serve individuals and families experiencing homelessness with severe service needs. This plan needs to be no more than 15 pages long, and we have to attach it to our collaborative application when we submit that to HUD. It must be an inclusive process with many stakeholders. We need to advance equity. We need to identify and address equity within our COC geography for BIPOC and LGBTQ+ clients. And that equity must be built into the plan that's mentioned above. We also need to demonstrate programmatic adherence to the Housing First model. We all check the box that says we're housing first, but we need to make sure that our programs are actually have policies and procedures in place that keep them adhering to what the Housing First model requires. So funding will be allocated in a 3-year grant. So we'll apply once, and then that one funding amount is to be expended over the course of 3 years. After the 3-year period, though, it's entirely possible that the projects may be converted into standard COC grants with 1-year terms. And if that happens, then those grants can increase our annual renewal demand amount, which is the one best way for us to be able to bring more money reliably into the COC. Anchorage could be awarded up to $1,813,073. For a planning grant, we're allowed to use up to 3% of the maximum award or the amount awarded if it's less. But our planning application must go through the review and rank policy like all of the other project applications. And that's different than the regular NOFO that comes out. Funding can pay for permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, a joint transitional rapid rehousing, supportive services only, and applications from the collaborative applicant, which is a CEH in this case, can also be made for coordinated entry programs, HMIS programs, and that planning that we talked about on the previous slide. One of the things, so with the rural set aside can pay for acquisition, remodel, and construction of units, but the unsheltered homelessness set aside does not allow for those expenditures. By 501c3 organizations, state and local governments, tribes, and tribally designated housing entities can all apply. Plan to serve families and individuals experiencing homelessness with severe service needs is very specific. It has to be no more than 15 pages. They tell us the size of and type of the font that it must be in. And there are a list of requirements on how we develop the plan and what the plan includes. So it must increase the number of permanent housing units available for unsheltered individuals and include landlord recruitment. We must have direct contributions from public and private health insurance providers and service providers. Programs must be tailored for participants, including mental and/or behavioral health, and we must have direct partnerships and written commitments. In previous applications, we may have been able to say, oh, this is what we intend to do. But in the development of this plan, we have to actually attach the written commitments and the value of the written commitments and in-kind support to these programs. We need to involve people with lived experience in the decision-making. We must talk about our street outreach strategy and our shelter or temporary housing options, but we have to be sure to not leave it at that. The plan has got to conclude with individuals being leased up in permanent housing. So they want us to identify, shelter, and house individuals using data and using that data to demonstrate performance of the programs. Prioritize households experiencing unsheltered homelessness, and support equitable community development and underserved communities. So that plan is actually worth 70 of the 100 points that the SNOFO collaborative application is based upon. So as you can see, that's going to be a priority. These are our current due dates. They are subject to change. We hope to have the project applications available the week after next. And the day after those project applications become available, we will host another webinar with a much more in-depth presentation discussing the requirements and the needs of applicants. The last day for project applications to be submitted to the COC is September 15th. The COC Review and Rank Committee will complete their work by October 4th. And then we will submit the collaborative application, the project priority list, the approved project applications, and our plan by October 13th. And there's a bonus. So we have it on good authority that we can expect to see the regular notice, COC competitive notice of funding opportunity drop sometime between tomorrow and Wednesday of next week. And the due date is anticipated to be no later than 4 p.m. East Coast time, September 29th. So what that means is that the regular NOFO will have to be completed in 60 days instead of the 90 days that we've historically gotten to complete that process. And we'll be doing the SNOFO and the NOFO at the same time. So, fine. Anyone have any questions for me? Is everyone still there?
Yes, I am not seeing any hands. Again, always anyone feel free to unmute and ask questions. I know I can speak for myself that I'm excited to watch for the upcoming webinar you mentioned to get more information, but I really appreciate this overview and the heads up on some of the due dates and what we might be looking at for the next couple months. I know that for myself, it's berry picking time, and this is going to seriously hinder my berry picking.
I'm sorry, Jessica.
I guess I'll take it if the HPRS can get more money. Okay, well, thank you so much, Helen, for that. I will definitely keep an eye out for the upcoming webinar and invite everyone else to keep their eye out for that too. Next, we have Tawny with a elections overview.
Thank you. All right, I'm just gonna share my screen here. Okay, so we have our new year of advisory council service, which follows our fiscal year calendar year. So July to June is usually the time we kind of look at when we're finding we have open seats. We look at recruiting for this time. There's been a bit of delay due to, well, honestly, everything happening outside behind me here in Anchorage. So we're a little bit behind, but that's okay. And we're just behind by our own internal standards, not by any other requirements. I should clarify that. So as of July 1, there were 3 council spots that were open. And that's because former councilors Nicole Lebos, Sophie Tidler, and Meg Zolotel stepped down from the council. There are no term limits for council members at the moment. So openings happen generally when someone moves or are no longer able to serve the position sort of for a variety of reasons. So what's happening? So what we did was we actually, I think early spring, I want to say it was May, we sent out emails and notices to folks letting them know that there were openings and that we solicited applications. And we didn't receive as many as we had hoped. So we extended the period through June and had hoped to kind of get more applications. And so in the end, we only got 2 applications back. And those folks I'll talk about here shortly. But basically the applications are then reviewed by the advisory council body, the sitting body, for qualifications, and it's then sent forward to the general COC membership and in this part of the meeting to notify folks. And then we're going to send out an electronic email, which if you participated in previous years, it's going to be pretty similar. So it'll be an email with a link to not MailChimp, it's the SurveyMonkey. I just realized I put the wrong thing here. It'll be a email that goes out to the primary representative that we have down for the organization, the different organizations and individual members of the COC. And it will be the link to the survey. And what we'll ask is that folks take an opportunity and vote. And it should take less than 5 minutes. There will be the opportunity to also nominate or write in additional candidates. So for more information though on the process, there's a new email address that's created, and it's going to be monitored from here on out. And you may also get emails moving forward from this by our meeting facilitators, Emily and Mitch. The email is info@hprsadvisorycouncil.org. So I also wanted to put that there in case folks had questions, or you want to do a presentation, or you want to see something presented, or you want to talk to somebody or make public comment. You can all use that new email address, and somebody is monitoring it. So with regards to the application, the applicant overview. So as I said, we invited COC members, partners, and providers. We solicited through our ACH membership. Also, anybody who was on our MailChimp weekly digest would have received notice about this. And that's not just members as well. That's a large amount of people. And then we had folks who were expressed interest in applying, and those folks were Captain Denise Delgado at the Salvation Army, Robin Dempsey, Andrea Nestor, and Shanae Williams from those organizations. And in the end, the 2 applications that we received were from Robin and Andrea. And so, like I said, they went through to the next phase and were reviewed. And so the advisory council felt both were qualified in terms of what the minimum requirements were for folks. So now is the chance for the COC membership to vote, and there will be a place for any comments or questions as well in the survey. So this is our, I'm sorry, it's a little small. You can see there's a lot of people, but this is our current advisory council makeup, the folks in the gray, and where they currently work, although I think I need to update at least one person here, probably Katie Skovic, but and these are sort of their qualifications or experience. We'll be updating this in the next month with some more information, but I wanted to at least provide this so you can kind of see that we do actively, we're looking for folks who kind of are involved in some way in the homeless prevention and response system. But if you know anybody, you'll see all the way down here at the bottom, there's a 3rd blank blue spot. So what we would say is that if you know anybody who might be interested or might be a good fit, whether they have lived experience or are currently experiencing homelessness, or are part of a minority group, or someone else who you just feel like would really be a great asset to the homeless prevention and response system and the advisory council, and they're not here, what we would encourage you is to invite them, or yourself if you're here, to the August advisory council meeting, which is August 25th. And it's the same 4 o'clock time, same Zoom link. And that is our all COC. Actually, it might be a little bit early, but we'll send out an invitation, but it's the all COC biennial meeting. And we want folks to be able to come to that and kind of learn more about what the continuum of care is and what the HPRS advisory council does and how folks can get involved. So hopefully you're subscribed to the weekly digest, and because that's where the information will go. It'll also go out on ACH's Facebook social media as well. So hopefully you have information there. And if you are not currently subscribed, you can also email. I think you can sign up on our website, ach.org, or if you want to email the same email address I put before, info@hprsadvisorycouncil.org. We'll figure it out and make sure you can get involved. So I think that's it. Are there any questions? Okay, well, I'm shooting for a Monday email, a Monday, Tuesday email. So keep your eye out and double check if anything is going to spam, because I know some of our emails have made it to folks spam, and we're constantly trying to fix that from a behind the scenes IT stuff fix. So I will pass it back to Jessica.
Thanks, Tawny. I'm not seeing any hands up. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions, but if you do, please feel free to unmute and ask, or if you think of them later, you can definitely reach out and ask as well. But otherwise, keep an eye out for the rest of for the election information. Question or member and public comment. Questions and comments from the chat box. I am not seeing anything there, but if anyone has any general questions or comments and wants to unmute and ask, please feel free. We're a little ahead of schedule, so I think we could entertain some conversation if anyone had anything. Otherwise, open the floor to sharing any good news or celebrations.
Well, I have one that I would like to share with folks. So one of the things that's been happening is we've been getting community members who have been coming into ACH and making donations, over the past few weeks since we made the call. And what I wanted to share, because I know a lot of folks don't necessarily interact with community members, is the amount of gratitude that has been expressed by these members of our community. I mean, it's from all walks of life. We just had someone come in with their 2 young children, and she was explaining to me that they're starting to read books about people who are unhoused, and that they're trying to teach their, I think it probably was like a 2 and a 5-year-old about what it means to experience homelessness and how to be compassionate. And, that's on top of bringing, hygiene supplies. But the community members have just really been amazing. And I've had the opportunity to talk with many of them. And it really just, the resounding message was thank you. And that we know that it's really hard right now. And we need to see how much is being done by the providers and the partners to kind of help this situation. And then there was just the ask of like, what can we do? So, I wanted to pass that along, because it's, it's not just ACH, it's all of us here who are working hard to kind of figure this out. So that's good news. And I feel like we should all hear it.
Any other good news or celebrations anyone wanted to share? All right, well, August, really. It's the July meeting, but the August advocacy opportunities coming up. You'll see them on the screen there. August 3rd is the monthly Housing, Homeless, and Neighborhood Development, or HAND Commission meeting. That's held monthly on the first Wednesday of the month. It's available for participation in person down at the L Street Health Department building or via Teams. The next regular assembly meeting is August 9th at Lusac Library, also streamed live on YouTube. August 17th is the next scheduled
Assembly Committee on Housing and Homelessness. That's held monthly on the third Wednesday of the month from 11 to 12. It's typically held in person at the LUSAC Library in the Assembly Chambers, and then also available via teleconference to participate and orally hear the meeting. Then the second regular assembly meeting of the month will be August 23rd. And our next meeting in August is August 25th from 4 to 5 p.m. And you can email info@hprsadvisorycouncil.org if you have any presentation ideas or anything that you wanted to provide as feedback before that meeting. All right, closing out the meeting, I just wanted to thank everyone for everything that they do and for being here with us today. And we'll finish up a little bit early. I hope everybody has a chance to enjoy the sunshine outside and have a great week, rest of the week, weekend, and until we are together again in August.
Thank you.